Respiration. In this module, you will discover all the freediver's secrets of respiration. You will learn the techniques of the body system and you will understand the importance of having good physical fitness. Respiration. When we breathe normally, we renew the air in just a small part of the volume of our lungs. The lungs are not in direct contact with the outside. To reach them, the air must first go through a series of cavities, nose and mouth, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, etc., in which gas exchange does not occur and are therefore called dead air spaces. Therefore, with each inhalation, the first air that reaches the lungs is that exhaled in the previous act that has remained in the dead air spaces. This air does not bring an improvement to the oxygen content in the lungs. When breathing through the snorkel, dead air spaces increases, further reducing respiratory efficiency. So when using the snorkel, you need to breathe more deeply. External respiration would be of little use without internal respiration. In order to produce energy, our body needs the oxygen that is present in the air. The molecules of this gas are collected in the lungs and distributed throughout the body via the circulatory system. Blood is pumped from the heart through the arteries to the capillaries where the walls are so thin that the oxygen molecules O2 can pass through them and diffuse into the cells. Vice versa, the carbon dioxide CO2 from the cells enters the capillaries. Oxygen-poor blood is drawn from the heart and pumped to the lungs, where it releases carbon dioxide and replenishes oxygen. The diving reflex. A diving reflex is defined as a set of reactions to the cardiovascular and respiratory system that occurs in all mammals, especially marine species, cetaceans, pinnipeds, etc., when they are immersed in water. The diving reflex is activated when the face comes into contact with cold water. The physiological variations produced are reduced heart rate, bradycardia, peripheral vasoconstriction, and blood supply mainly in the vital organs, heart and brain. Increase in average blood pressure. The physiological variations produced by the dive reflex are all aimed at reducing oxygen consumption. Although man is not a predominantly aquatic mammal, the diving reflex is particularly well developed in us. Ventilation. The correct breathing techniques will allow you to attain longer free diving times with ease and in a completely natural way. Using an analogy, we could say that our body is similar to a car, while our free dives are comparable to the time we spend between one stop at the gas station and the next, or rather between one breath and another. How can we save fuel and lengthen the time between stops? The first thing to do is certainly to use a larger tank that allows for greater autonomy. The freediver's tank is the lungs. We will therefore have to learn how to use them to the maximum. A second condition that contributes significantly to the fuel consumption of a car is the type of terrain the car is travelling on. Asphalt, sand, uphill or downhill, which for the freediver becomes calm or rough sea, cold or warm water, contrary or favourable currents, etc. Also in this case, we need to learn how to adapt so as to better cope with the weather and sea conditions. Finally, the thing that influences the fuel consumption of a car the most is the driver's style of driving. Sporty, calm, distracted, which for the freediver can be interpreted as rapid, relaxed, or uncoordinated movements. This aspect is certainly the one that will influence our autonomy the most. Therefore, if our aim is to increase our autonomy, it becomes clear how important it is to save fuel by learning to drive well and not just fill the tank to the top. Our body and our cells need energy to function, and this energy is produced by the oxygen contained in the air we breathe. The more our muscles work, running, moving, lifting weights or finning, the faster they consume the available oxygen supply, and the greater the production of CO2, which is the waste gas produced by the metabolism of oxygen. For this reason, when we do physical activities, we feel the need to breathe more often and with more force, the classic breathlessness. In fact, we must feed our system with a greater amount of oxygen. In order to improve your freediving performances, it is necessary to learn how to increase gas exchange and make the most of your lung capacity. The lungs, contained within the ribcage, are surrounded by muscular bands that are used to expand them, inhalation, or compress them, exhalation. The lungs do not move by themselves, but follow the contractions and the relaxation of the respiratory muscles around them. The main muscle groups used for breathing are the diaphragm, the abdominals, and the rib muscles. The diaphragm is a circular muscle attached to the base of the ribcage that divides the lung area above from the abdominal area below. Its contraction towards the abdominal area creates an expansion of the lower part of the lungs, or an inspiration, diaphragmatic. If we wanted to quantify the volume of air moved by the diaphragm, we can say, simplifying, that it corresponds to about 60% of the maximum. The abdominals are composed of different muscle groups located at the level of the abdomen, attached to lower ribs, top, and pelvis lower down. For respiratory purposes, the abdominals can be defined as muscles antagonistic to the diaphragm. Their voluntary or involuntary contraction, in fact, physically prevent the correct downwards movement of the diaphragm. When using the diaphragm to inhale, the abdominal muscles should be as relaxed and decontracted as possible. The intercostal muscles are also composed of different bands all around and between the ribs. The contraction of the intercostal muscles creates an expansion of the upper part of the lungs contained in the ribcage, or rather, a thoracic inspiration. Their consequent relaxation creates a slow but constant deflation of the chest with a thoracic expiration. If we want to quantify the volume of air moved by the intercostal muscles, we can say that it is about 30% of the maximum. Your PSS instructor will show you the breathing and relaxation exercises to develop to improve your freediving performance. Preparing to freedive. Now that you know the position and functions of the different respiratory muscles, let's see how to use them and why. The first phase of freediving preparation, that is when you are floating on the surface and not moving, is to listen to your body. You will feel that some parts are tensed, so identify the area and relax the muscles one at a time without hurrying, until your level of general relaxation is what you want it to be. When you have achieved the correct muscle relaxation, start controlling your breathing using only the diaphragm. diaphragmatic inspiration and passive diaphragmatic expiration. During this phase, it is necessary not to use the intercostal muscles, so do not expand the chest. The time of diaphragmatic breathing will depend on your skill in maintaining proper muscle relaxation. When you are ready to take the last breath, before diving under, make a forced expiration using the abdominal muscles. Then perform a complete diaphragmatic inspiration, 60% of the volume, and immediately add the thoracic inspiration, 30% of the volume. At this point, remove the snorkel from your mouth and make the pike dive. Good preparation can be wasted by rapid and uncoordinated movements. They are typical of beginners, so to save oxygen when freediving, always try to move slowly and in a coordinated manner. To learn the techniques of performing breathing exercises in a natural and relaxed way, your instructor will help you perform them first on dry land, lying on your back, and then in confined waters, floating on the surface, and breathing through your snorkel. Under your instructor's supervision, you will learn other important details regarding relaxation and breathing. Recovery breathing. After a free dive, the body will be low in oxygen and rich in carbon dioxide. It will therefore be necessary to carry out what is known as recovery breathing. Respiration immediately after emerging should consist of deep and accelerated inhalations and normal passive expirations. The first phase of accelerated breathing must not exceed 1 minute. The time on the surface between one dive and another must be sufficient to allow you to return to your initial condition. Your PSS instructor will guide you in the correct management of recovery breathing. Gas exchanges and blackout. What induces the gas molecules to pass through the capillary walls? It is their different density on either side of the wall. For example, if the blood is rich in oxygen while the tissue beyond the capillary wall is poor, the oxygen molecules move from the blood to the tissue. The opposite occurs in the lungs. In fact, inside they look more like a sponge than a balloon. There are thousands of small air pockets called alveoli. When we inhale, the alveoli swell and fill up with air. The blood present in the capillaries that surround each alveolus is poor in oxygen and therefore draws its molecules from the alveolar air. After some time under the water, however, the air in the alveoli also becomes low in oxygen. The body reacts by contracting the diaphragm, diaphragmatic contractions, to mix up the air contained in the lungs. Therefore, air a little richer in the oxygen comes into contact with the wall of the alveolus. However, if you continue the breath-holding dive, after a few diaphragmatic contractions, the effect of this internal shake-up is no longer effective and oxygen no longer arrives in the blood and therefore in the tissues. As a consequence, you suffer a blackout. A blackout is in practice fainting, which in water can be dangerous, especially if you're alone, because it could lead to drowning. Furthermore, the density of oxygen molecules present in an alveolus depends on its volume. When the pressure decreases on ascent, the volume of the alveolus increases and the oxygen molecules become more sparse. By prolonging the free dive beyond your limits, you could suffer a blackout right in the last meters of the ascent when the air pressure in the alveoli decreases rapidly. Hyperventilation. Do not confuse deep ventilation with hyperventilation. Hyperventilation is performed with forced and fast breaths, with the result of lowering the content of carbon dioxide in the pulmonary alveoli without increasing the amount of oxygen introduced, nor the volume of air inspired. Since it is the excess of carbon dioxide in the lungs that stimulates the respiratory action, prolonged hyperventilation can be dangerous. Lowering the level of carbon dioxide in the lungs delay the arrival of the stimulus to breathe and the diaphragmatic contractions. This delay could lead you to prolong your freedive until you reach an oxygen level that is too low in the pulmonary alveoli, which the body reacts to with a hypoxic syncope. Blackout. Breathlessness. If you make a prolonged effort, the cells produce a significant amount of carbon dioxide, which stimulates you to breathe faster. If your recovery breathing is superficial, its effectiveness is minimal, and the elimination of carbon dioxide is not sufficient to reduce the respiratory stimulus. This has created a chain that makes you breathe quickly and superficially, while feeling a sensation of being out of air. This is breathlessness. Now that you understand respiration better, you know how to control breathlessness, stop, suspend all activities, and take some deep breaths, trying to expel all the air in your lungs. The buddy system. The buddy system makes the dive safer, more fun, and easier. As safety is based on the presence of a buddy, you must always remain close by and ready to intervene. The only exception to this procedure of staying side by side is the moment of the freedive itself, when the one up, one down method is adopted. This means that when one of the buddy pair goes under, their buddy stays on the surface and watches them constantly, without ever losing sight of them. All freedivers must limit the depth of their dives to that which can also be reached by their buddy. Otherwise, if the diver needs assistance and is at a depth that their buddy cannot reach, there will be no one able to intervene and help them. Health and fitness. If you have a bad cold or sinusitis, or any other cases when your health is not good, it is best not to dive. Freediving is easy and certainly does not require an Olympian physique. But if for some reason you find yourself having to swim against the current, strong leg muscles and good resistance will help you. Your athletic preparation will, in this case, be one of the most important safety procedures. For freedivers, the best sport to practice is freediving itself and swimming with mask, snorkel and fins. However, all the aerobic sports that improve physical and cardiocirculatory abilities also help the freediver. So cycling, jogging, running, etc. can be valid alternatives to freediving training. In the next module, you will further your knowledge of the underwater world and its characteristics. You will learn how to organize freediving excursions and how to assist and rescue your buddies.